All right, Nico, can you say, welcome to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies?
It's a happy episode. Happy babies.
Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm the prenatal and pediatric chiropractor here at the Cap Wellness Center. And this podcast is all about helping you have a proactively healthy pregnancy so you can have a safe, gentle, natural birth. And that's going to allow you to bring your baby into the world that much more gently and healthily so you can start off your family experience more powerfully than if it's full of stress and trauma and other health concerns. So if you are a fan of this show and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Wherever you listen to your podcast, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an upcoming episode. And also, if you haven't rated or reviewed the podcast and you've enjoyed it and gotten value of it, that will really help me out because that'll allow this podcast to reach more and more parents like yourself that might be missing out on this type of information and helping them along their parenting journey. So thank you in advance for that. And thank you if you already have rated and reviewed. So on today's episode, I am so excited to have Dr. Bruce Lipton back on the podcast. His first episode that we did about a year ago is the #1 most downloaded episode of my show. It's been downloaded over 10,000 times now, so it really struck a nerve. He talked about how stress influences not only your pregnancy, but the genetic expression of your baby. It turns on certain genes, turns on other genes, and it can really influence the physiological development of the baby, but also their mental emotional development. And that's what we're going to continue the conversation with today. He's going to talk about early childhood development and how important those first few years are in further influencing the genes as far as your genetic expression, and that goes into the whole world of epigenetics, but then also in a mental emotional state and talking about belief systems and how they perceive the world and how influential you can be on that and how important that can be for your child going on into the rest of their lives. So it's an amazing discussion, so one that I was really excited to have with him, and I know you'll get a lot out of. So if you haven't listened to his other episode, it's definitely not a prerequisite for this conversation, but I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic listen and explains a lot about how stress can affect your pregnancy and how it affects the baby. And now we get to talk about, now the baby's here, what we can do to influence in a really positive way in those first few years and what a huge impact it makes. So with no further ado, let me introduce Dr. Lipton to you again, in case if you haven't known him, and then we'll get right over to that conversation. Dr. Bruce Lipton is the author of the bestseller, The Biology of Belief, and is a former allopathic medical school professor and research scientist. His pioneering research on cloned stem cells at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine presaged the revolutionary field of epigenetics, the new science of how environment and perception control your genes. In recognition of his contributions to the field of embryology and human development, the Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health elected Bruce Lipton to their board of directors. Bruce has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a popular keynote speaker and workshop presenter on topics of conscious parenting and the science of complementary medicine. So now let me switch over to my conversation with Dr. Bruce Lipton. All right, Bruce, welcome back to the podcast.
Jay, I am so happy to be here with you and this wonderful audience because the story that we have to tell together is the empowerment that people need to know about, especially in raising children.
Yeah, it's so important. And our episode that we did, I think it was a year ago, is our #1 most downloaded episode. So it definitely touched a nerve. People were really interested in it. I'm happy to have you come back because in our first episode, and our listeners, if you haven't listened to that one, please check that one. It was all about pregnancy pregnancy and the prenatal environment and how important that is for your baby's development and then later on in life. And it was at the very end of that conversation we started talking about, all right, now that they're here in the world, what do we do? And how can we, maybe work with a stressful environment that was in the prenatal, help them unwind that, but also take really great responsibility and awareness into those first couple of years, so that we're giving them a leg up as much as we can, and that's all parents want to do. So we're going to talk about that all today. I want, though, Bruce, if you wouldn't mind, connect the dots. We heard your bio at the very beginning, and connect the dots for the listeners of how, starting as a cellular biologist, teaching in med school, now you're this thought leader in spiritual and physical and mental well-being, and we're going to be talking about childhood development today. So connect those dots on how you started and your work with epigenetics, and then we'll dive in.
All right. Well, let's try and make this brief, if I can. I'm a very talkative guy, millions of words, trying to abbreviate. So let's try it. Number one. My research, which really sent me off in this entire direction that has become the course of my life, stems from work with stem cells. Stem cells are embryonic cells, but we don't call them embryonic cells because after you're born, moment before you're born, I would look at a biopsy and say, oh, see this cell, that's an embryonic cell. 1 minute after you're born, do the same biopsy, look at the very same cell and go, oh, you see that cell's called a stem cell. So basically, it's just a name change because once you're born, we can't really refer to them as embryonic cells, so we call them stem cells. But in truth, they're embryo cells. You said, well, why should I have embryo cells in my body? And the answer is simply this. Number one, a body, a normal adult body, has about 50 trillion cells comprising a community collectively called the body. Now, the issue about it is that every day we lose hundreds of billions of cells, normal attrition. As a matter of fact, just in the couple of minutes that we've been talking about, we've lost a few million red blood cells because they age, they die, and they have to be replaced. So every day, I don't care what age you are, every day we're losing hundreds of billions of cells. To stay alive and healthy, you have to replace those hundreds of billions of cells daily. That is the job of stem cells. So if you're listening to the broadcast and you're alive, which hopefully is so, then recognize this. You have stem cells because if you didn't, you would not be alive because you wouldn't be able to replace those cells that are dying very, very quickly. So I'm growing stem cells. They're multipotential. And so I'm cloning them. And what that means is simply basically taking one stem cell, putting it in a dish by itself. And the cell divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's 1, and then 2, 4, 8, doubling, until after a week about 30,000 cells are in the Petri dish. The most important point about this so far is that the 30,000 cells are genetically identical because they came from the same parent cell. Now, what I do, or what I did in this experiment originally, was I separated those genetically identical cells into 3 different Petri dishes and slightly changed the culture medium, which is the environment the cells grow in. Now, what is culture medium? Very important. It's the laboratory equivalent of blood. So if I'm going to grow human cells, I look at the composition of human blood and then synthesize the version of human blood we call culture medium. If I grow mouse cells, I look at the mouse blood composition and make a culture medium based on that. So a culture medium is like the equivalent of blood. The results of the study were very important because what I did is, while I had genetically identical cells in each dish, I made slight changes in the chemical composition of the culture medium. So each of the dishes had its own environment, so to speak. In one dish, the cells formed muscle. In the second dish, the cells formed bone. The third dish, the cells formed fat cells. Now, the most profound question is, well, what controls the fate of the cells? Starting with the premise that they were all genetically identical removes the genes from that assessment. The only thing that was different between the dishes was the composition of the culture medium. So the results clearly showed that the environment that the cells are in is facilitating the expression of those cells. You change the environment, you change the expression of the cells. And this becomes really important as an insight, is that genes were not controlling this environment. The situation in the environment was controlling the fate of the cells. Change the environment and you change the fate of the cells. Well, right now, this is like, oh, okay, that's a nice, interesting study in a laboratory of cells in a plastic petri dish. But what about me? I'm a human being. What the hell does this have to do with me? I go, oh, here. When you look in the mirror and see yourself, you see a single entity looking back. And I say, well, first of all, that's an illusion. It's an illusion because the human body is actually comprised of about 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. The human, whether it's the name of that human is Jay or Bruce, that name is not a reflection of a single entity. It's a reflection of a community of up to 50 trillion cells. So the jokey part of this whole thing is that a human body is the equivalent of a skin-covered culture dish, inside of which are 50 trillion cells. And I go, well, and what about the culture medium? I go, oh, that's the original culture medium, blood. And I go, oh, so the chemical composition of the blood will determine the fate of the cells, just the same as the chemical composition of the culture medium determines the fate of the cells in the plastic dish. It doesn't make a difference if the cell's in plastic dish or skin dish. It's still going to respond to environmental information. So all of a sudden I go, oh, so the culture medium in my human body called blood is controlling the fate of the cells. And I go, yeah. And I go, well, what's the chemistry? Because apparently it's you change the chemistry, you change the fate. And I go, well, the chemistry of the blood is controlled by the brain. That's the chemist that synthesizes the blood. The next question, of course, now is the most important question is, well, what chemicals should the brain put into the blood? Because apparently the chemistry of the blood will determine the fate of the cells. And I go, here's the point. The chemistry that is put into the blood by the brain is a result of the picture in the mind. The picture in the mind is broken down by the brain into chemistry. And so that when you have a picture, the brain releases a complementary cluster of chemicals that matches that picture. If you in love and you open your eyes, the brain releases some beautiful elements into the blood, such as dopamine for pleasure, vasopressin, which makes you more attractive to your mate, oxytocin, which bonds you to your source of your pleasure, your mate, and growth hormone. I go, what's the consequence of putting those elements into culture medium? And the thing is, whether it's in the body or in the culture dish, when you add those elements to a culture medium, it enhances the vitality of the cells. In fact, the outcome is very simple. When people are in love, they glow. That healthy glow is a reflection of healthy chemistry, culture medium, affecting the body cells. So love enhances the fate of the cells. The same person, though, could open their eyes, and if they see something that scares them, I go, well, first thing is the chemistry that was released in love, that's not going to be released anymore. In a state of fear, the body releases stress hormones, inflammatory agents into the blood, so that's a different chemical composition. It changes the fate of the cells. The point then comes down, what controls the fate of our biology? And the answer is, what pictures do we hold in our mind? Because these pictures will be translated by the biology. Okay, now, how does this affect us? I say, well, the pictures in our mind are derived from our experiences in the world. If you have love in the world, then, of course, the moment you experience love, all those beautiful chemicals I talked about start to become secreted into the blood and enhance our vitality. But if there are things that threaten your life or put pressure on you, violence or fear or anything like that, the blood chemistry completely changes into one of a protection chemistry, which actually doesn't support growth and health at all. And the relevance about this, as we change the picture in our mind, we change the fate of the cells. So all of a sudden I go, and now where do the pictures in the mind come from? And all of a sudden we start to say, well, the pictures in the mind become, at first in our life, programs. And I say, well, why should they be programmed? And the answer is this. I use an analogy in my lectures, Jay, and it's sort of like I say, look, you go to the Apple store and you buy a brand new iPod. And the iPod, when you take it out of the box, the front screen is called the touch screen. On the touchscreen, you can make a playlist, you can adjust the volume, the EQ, you can go fast forward, you can do all kinds of creative things. So the touchscreen on the iPod is like the conscious mind, very creative. Make a playlist, create what you want, great. So I say, okay, great. I get a brand new iPod, take it out of the box, and I push play, and nothing happens. Being an old guy, I'm a little upset about all the money I just spent. The damn thing isn't working. And then there's this little 7-year-old kid comes up and goes, "Hey, mister, you didn't download any music. How do you expect to play any music?" And it's like, oh. So in other words, before you can create a playlist, you have to have programs. And then you can engage the playlist in any way you like. And I go, okay, great. Now let's make this parallel to the mind. The touch screen is the equivalent of the conscious mind, creative. The hard drive in the iPod is the equivalent of the subconscious, where you download programs. The point is this. When a child's first born, it's not operating in its conscious mind level. It's like a brand new iPod. You have to put programs in there before consciousness can manifest. Simply, look, a baby is being born. Pretend the baby could speak the moment it's born. The baby's coming out of the birth canal. Everybody's coming around going, "Hey, you're right, the baby's coming. Yeah, great." And someone says to the baby, as the baby's head is coming out, looking around in wonder, someone asks the baby, "Tell us something." And the baby looks up and goes, "I don't know anything. I just got here." It's the blank iPod. In other words, a child cannot be conscious unless there's programs to be conscious of. A child cannot create consciousness as much as create a playlist if there's no program in the memory. So nature created the first 7 years of life, including the last trimester of pregnancy, as a download period in which to put programs. The reason is this. You cannot be conscious if you have nothing to be conscious of. So the first 7 years of a child's life, the brain is not even operating at the level of consciousness. The primary vibration of the brain, energy vibration, and energy vibrations are what neuroscientists read when they put EEG, electroencephalograph wires on a person's head. They're reading brain activity, okay? So the relevance about this is that when a child's born, the brain activity of that child for the first 7 years is not at the higher vibration of consciousness. It's just below consciousness. The predominant brain activity of a child under 7 is in a range called Theta. Now, Theta is imagination. And I said, yeah, this is interesting because this is a character of children under 7. They can take an imaginary expression and make it part of their real life. So the mother says to the child, "Give me the broom." And the child said, "This is not a broom, this is a horse." That's Theta. Theta is taking a broom, but through imagination, that broom is not a broom. Now it represents a real, live, breathing horse. So the kid is riding the broom. The mother says, "Give me the broom." And the kid's like, "I don't know what you're talking about because it's not a broom."
Now
in
I'm riding
imagination.
a horse, right?
It's a horse, okay?
Right.
So the relevance about that is Theta is a characteristic experience, but Theta is hypnosis. You go, so why should there be hypnosis? The answer is very simple. How can you become conscious until you get some programs? And so the first 7 years is nature's programmable period for a child. I say, why should a child be programmed? The first thing is this. To be a functional member of a family and a community, you got to know the rules, man. There's lots of rules. How many rules? 1,000 rules. Thousands. I mean, just to give you an example of the multiplicity, how a father talks to their own child is not how the father talks to somebody else's child. It's not how the father talks to the mother, which is not the same as the father talks to any other adult, which is not the same as the father talks to the policeman, which is different than he talks to anybody else. I go, wow. Every one of these situations requires a different behavior. I go, yeah. And if you think about how many behaviors must be employed to be a functional member of family and community, thousands. Problem. How can you teach an infant thousands of behavioral rules so that they become, fundamentally integrated into the family and community? And the answer is you can't. You can't teach them that. You can't say, here's a book, sit down and read it. I know you're 3, but there's some pictures. You might like it. No, you can't give them that. That's not how they learn. So I say, how do they learn? I say, nature made it simple. Nature put them in Theta. Theta is not just imagination. Theta is hypnosis. Point. A child's brain under 7 is the equivalent of a video camera. Everything it sees, it downloads and records it into the subconscious mind as behavior. So how does a child learn behavior? It focuses on the mother's behavior. It focuses on the father's behavior, the siblings' behavior, the behavior of the people in the community. I say, what is it doing? For the first 7 years, it's downloading their behavior. So I'm building a repertoire, a database, so that now when I want to use the touch screen and create my own consciousness, I've got data to work with. So the first 7 years of a child's life is characterized by the brain and theta, a state of hypnosis. The point that's very important about this then is the programs that go into a child's subconscious are downloaded hypnotically, number one. Number two, and this is important, the child is not in a state of consciousness during this point, so that whatever the programs that are going in, they're not being filtered by a child's consciousness. Right. They're just being recorded. Good programs, bad programs, whatever, just download them. They're in there.
They're not making any decisions about what they're taking on.
Absolutely. They're not conscious of, like creatively understanding everything. They're just recording whatever it is. Right. And so the first number of 7 years, most of the behavior is just a complete replay of what the parents have programmed into them. I mean, this is to the chagrin of the parents when the child all of a sudden starts using some explicative, some bad words. What's really very funny about the situation is when a child uses these bad words, recognize this. They're in total context. An adult could have said that, and everybody would have understood exactly what they meant. So when a child says something like that, it's my God, they're using the word in the most perfect way. As an adult, I understand exactly what they mean. But I said, where the hell did you get that behavior? And it's sort of like, I copied it from you. So right. That's where the chagrin comes to the parents, like, yeah, that's us.
Right.
The child is playing us. So I say, well, this is really cool. This is how you get basic, rules and order and organization to be that functional member in a family. But by age 7, the conscious mind kicks in. And the conscious mind is this creative mind versus the subconscious, which has been operating up to now. That's the habit mind. That's basically what it is. I put a program in, push a button, play the program. I learned how my father does this, push the button, I do it. Just the same as my father did. I downloaded behavior. After age 7, the child starts to become conscious, creative, and it can use those behaviors and mix and match and blend and do all. It's sort of like you have a computer. You have all your data in the hard drive, all the programs, the pictures, the documents, and all that. And I say, yeah, but when you open them up and put them on the desktop, you can manipulate them. You can morph them, change them, edit them. You can do all these things. The conscious mind is like the desktop or the touchscreen. That's the creative place. The hard drive has the programs. So when a child reaches 7, they start using the programs and constructing them in ways to create the character of their lives. Now, the issue is, once the conscious mind is in, the conscious mind can drive the vehicle, the body, or I can let the subconscious, the automatic programs that were downloaded, that could run the body. Both of them can run the body. Now, the issue, what's different and important, and this is fundamental for parents to understand, is that the conscious mind is the creative mind. The subconscious mind is the habit mind. The point about this is that whatever's in the subconscious, push the button, that behavior is just going to repeat itself for as long as you live, and unless you change that program, it's always going to be there. A lot of people attribute the subconscious to evil. I go, no, that's a mistake. Subconscious is one of the most valuable assets we have. Jay, if I asked you, when did you learn the program of walking? Presumably before 2.
Right.
I say, have you ever had to relearn how to walk again?
Mm-mm.
Hopefully, no.
Hopefully, no, yeah.
So all of a sudden it says, wow, thank God that's subconscious, because if I had to learn how to walk every day, I'd be spending most of the day just trying to coordinate my muscles. But once I learned, don't have to learn how to do it again. Once I learned how to drive a car, I don't have to think about all the details, although there are hundreds of details involved with driving the car. I mean, go back to the first day you got in the driver's seat with a key, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, there's a lot going on in the front windshield. There are mirrors looking at the side, the back. There are gauges all over the dashboard. There are pedals on the floor. You got to hear the sound of the engine. You got to pay attention. It's like, that's a lot of things to pay attention to. But once you've learned it and it becomes an automatic program driving, you never have to think about that again. Today you get in the car, you put the key in the ignition, and you could be thinking about your destination or your vacation or any damn thing you want and drive the car and not pay any attention to the details because subconscious knows how to do it. Okay, so I say, so now the difference between the two minds, the conscious mind, which begins functioning around age 7, is creative mind. Subconscious mind is habit. I go, but the creative mind is the one connected to our personal identity, the one connected to our spirituality, the one that makes us different than anybody else. Subconscious mind is just a hard drive. You can take a hard drive from here and a hard drive from there. There's nothing personal about them. They're just programs in them. But the conscious mind is you. And so when I ask the most important question is, okay, Jay, tell me what you want from your life. What is it you want? This is your life. What do you want? The point is, where's the answer going to come from? And the answer from that question is going to come from the conscious mind, which is creative. It can imagine, I would love to be successful in that, healthy in here, happy there. And I go, oh, great. Those are great visions. That's creative. It's very nice. And if you're running from the conscious mind, you're going to be driving your vehicle toward those destinations. The problem is this. The conscious mind, in addition to be creative, can also think. So, I lay this out on you right now, Jay. I say, tell me what you're doing on Monday at 2 o'clock. If you're seriously going to answer that question, where are you going to find the answer at this instant? And the answer is, well, somewhere in my mind. Somewhere I must have a memory of what I'm planning to do on Monday. And I go, so when you are thinking, the conscious mind has to go inside the head. That's where the answers are. Thinking answers are inside your head. So I go, oh yeah, but if I'm driving the vehicle and I'm starting to think, well, thinking means I must let go of paying attention to what's going on the outside and redirect my attention with the conscious mind to the inside to think about what the answer is. I go, well, you have to have a problem. And the problem is this. If the conscious mind's not paying attention, then who's going to be moving your vehicle? Does it stop? I mean, if you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you have a thought, does that mean you freeze? And then the thought's done, and then you say, okay, back to walking. Here I go again. Or if you're driving the vehicle, you're driving your car and you have a thought, who's driving the vehicle? Because for that moment when you're in thought, you're not paying attention to the outside. And this becomes really important because what the point is clearly this. The conscious mind can pay attention and be hands on the wheel, drive the vehicle toward wishes and desires. But if the moment the conscious mind is thinking, by definition, it lets go of the wheel, it goes inside the head to resolve thinking. So whoever is going to control the vehicle, the subconscious, steps in and becomes autopilot. So in other words, if I'm walking down the street and have a thought, I can keep walking very safely. I'm not going to walk off the sidewalk or walk into a tree. My subconscious is going to be, controlling my walking while my conscious is busy. So subconscious is autopilot. Now, the scary bad. The scary bad is how much of my life is controlled by my conscious mind, wishes and desires. So when I'm in conscious mind, I'm going toward those ends. And how much of my life is controlled by my subconscious programs, primarily from other people? And the answer is shocking. We're only conscious, controlling our behavior with our conscious wishes and desires 5% of the time. 95% of the day, our conscious mind is in thought. I go, yeah, what does that mean? I say, well, if it's thinking, it's not running the vehicle. The autopilot's running the vehicle. I go, oh my God, 95% of the day, I'm driving my biology based on my programs that I got downloaded in the first 7 years. And that's where the issues of our life comes from. And it goes like this. We are now recognized that 70% or more of the conventional downloads before age 7 are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting programs. And I go, wow, 70% of our subconscious programs are disempowering. I go, Jesus, this makes a big issue. If my life, 95% of my life is coming from the subconscious, damn, most of those programs are not going to help me at all. And I go, this is the issue. And the issue is simply this. We wake up in the morning with conscious creative thoughts in our head. Today's the day I'm going to get healthy. Today's the day I'm going to find a great relationship. Today I'm going to get the best job. I go, good. This is wishes, desires, creative thinking, conscious mind. Cool. But by the time we get dressed out the door and on the road, our conscious mind has been thinking and thinking. And so the behavior that we're playing is not coming from the conscious mind, it's coming from the subconscious mind because the conscious mind is busy. And I go, yeah, but most of the programs in the subconscious are negative and disempowering. I say, so what's the result? And the answer is this. You come home at the end of the day. You started out as, today I'm going to get all those successful things. At the end of the day, you come home, it's like none of that happened. Things suck. And then you go, well, hell, I'm the one that wanted to be successful. I'm the one that has the wishes and desires for love and all those things that I want. And it didn't happen. And therefore, and this is where the problem comes from right here, Jay, is the person sits there at get home, drink in their hand, going, damn, I went forward with all these great wishes and desires, and none of it manifested. And the result is, oh my God, the universe is not supporting me. The universe it's not in my fate to be successful or happy. Why? I wanted to be, and look, it didn't work. And here's where the problem comes from. When the conscious mind is busy and the subconscious mind is autopilot, whatever programs are being played, they're not being observed by the conscious mind. Conscious mind is busy. It's inside. It's thinking. It doesn't see what the hell the programs are. So, it's interesting because for 20 years or more, I've been using the same story in my lecture, and I'm not changing it because almost everybody gets it, and it's profoundly important. And here's the story. I say, somewhere in your development, you were probably very close to a friend. You knew your friend's behavior very, very well, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day you see your friend has the exact same behavior as their parent. And of course, you can't wait to tell your friend. You go, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then you back away from Bill. Bill goes ballistic. How can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. I'm me. And everyone laughs, like you just did, because of an experience and awareness of this. And I go, at this moment, this is the most profound story in the world for this reason. Everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I go, well, explain that. I go, yeah, I just did. 95% of the day, Bill's conscious mind is busy thinking, not paying attention to what's going on in the world, playing as default subconscious autopilot programs, not observing these programs. And as a result, 95% of the day, Bill doesn't know that he's behaving like his father. And if his father doesn't have good behaviors, guess what? At the end of the day, when Bill comes home, life sucks. It didn't work out again. And it's like we have that vision of, well, the universe is against me. And it's like, no. Just like Bill, each one of us is Bill. Every day, 95% of our programs are coming from subconscious. And since the vast majority are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting, then you would have to guess, well, what would be the consequence on the day? And I go, it's not going to be good. Not going to be good because the wishes and desires are not manifesting. You're playing the programs of limitation, and you don't see it. Just like Bill, you don't see it. And that means it's invisible. And therefore, I say, then that's the crux of the problem. If my life is failing because of invisible things, then what the hell is causing my life to fail? And the answer is the programs in the subconscious that are not supporting you are still playing 95% of the day. I go, where'd those programs come from? I downloaded those from my family in the first 7 years of life. I go, oh my God, we're not running our lives. We're only running our lives 5% of the time, driving it toward our destination of wishes and desires. Thinking 95% of the time means I default to the subconscious, and my life is not coming from my wishes and desires. It's coming from my programs, most of which are negative. And therefore, we are left as a group of people perceiving we are victims. Of course, we had great desires to succeed. The failure can't be due to me. And that's only because we don't see, like Bill, our own behavior is really the cause of the problem. And therefore, we walk away as victims of life. Like, geez, why isn't happiness come into my life? Why can't I be successful? Why can't I have something positive? And the answer is, well, you could, but your programs aren't working right. And I go, okay, let's bring this into a current conventional awareness. And that is, there's a movie called The Matrix. You go to the video store, you say, where's The Matrix? They say it's in science fiction. I go, no. The Matrix is a documentary. Every one of us has been programmed. That's a fact of life. Every one of us has to go through Theta for 7 years to get enough database to be able to carry on our life. So everyone has been programmed, just as The Matrix said. But in the story of The Matrix, there's a very interesting part. It says that you have an opportunity to take a red pill or a blue pill. If you take the blue pill and you wake up, life is just the way it's always been. Nothing's different. Everything's exactly the same. But they say if you take the red pill and you wake up, you're out of the program. Well, what's interesting is, well, what would be the consequence of taking the red pill? What would it be like in our lives if we stop taking, or if we take the red pill and stop playing those developmental programs in the first 7 years? Say, what would be the consequence? And the answer is fabulous, because almost everybody out in our audience, Jay, has done this without even knowing they've taken the red pill, with profound consequences. So let me tell you what the equivalent of taking the red pill is. Falling deeply in love with somebody. I go, what? Why? What happens? I go, when you fall in love like that, guess what? You stop thinking. You start being mindful. You start being present. Why? Look, you've been looking for this person your whole life. They show up. This is not the time to be thinking. This is the time to be enjoying what you got. So it turns out, when we fall in love like that, there's a period right afterwards where we stay mindful. Simply what that means is we don't think so much. And as a result, the conscious mind keeps its hands on the wheels for up to 90% of the time. Normally, it's only 5%. I say, yeah, but if you're driving 90% with conscious mind on the wheel, then basically you're driving toward wishes and desires. I go, that is why when you first fall in love, there's a period called the honeymoon. The honeymoon is so fabulously beautiful, happy, healthy, loving, enjoyable. Sleeping gets in the way of you enjoying life. I go, your life could suck every day. And all of a sudden, one day you meet this person, your new partner, and then 24 hours later, you're experiencing heaven on earth. I go, wow, how did that happen? And the answer was this, simple. Up until you met your partner, your life was being controlled 95% by the programs downloaded before 7, the vast majority of which are disempowering and sabotaging. But the moment you fall in love, you no longer default to the subconscious. You stay conscious. Staying conscious allows you to stay in that state of mind of creativity, wishes, and desires. When two people are falling in love and then operate from their conscious minds and do not default to subconscious control, then both of them are operating with what? Wishes and desires. And what do we manifest? Heaven on earth. And I go, wow, that's really cool. That's called the honeymoon. Now, just to finish that story, how come the honeymoon doesn't last? It always starts out, it's always so beautiful and healthy and happy. And I go, why doesn't it last? And the answer is straightforward. And the answer is, at some point, thinking returns to our lives. You can't just stay present all the time, because there's some point, oh my God, I have to fix the car. I got some chores to do. I got to do something on the job. I'm required to do this. And the moment those thoughts come into our head is the moment the conscious mind lets go of the wheel. And when the conscious mind lets go of the wheel, the subconscious kicks in with its behavior. I go, you know what's interesting? You never played any of those negative subconscious programs during the honeymoon because you didn't let go of the wheel. You were driving with wishes and desires, manifesting them. But the moment thinking cuts back in is the moment that these subconscious programs that haven't played all of a sudden surface and start to play. Most of them being negative causes a monkey wrench in the relationship. So I could be in a honeymoon with my partner, Margaret, and we're love and life is heaven on earth and everything's beautiful. And we've been living this way, honeymoon. But on this particular day, she comes to ask me a simple question. I'm thinking about a job-related thing I have to do. I respond to her. Now, here, what's the point? My response is not coming from my conscious mind. My conscious mind's thinking. My response comes from my program. Yeah, but that's my father's behavior. And that behavior is like, oh my God, that could throw a monkey wrench in the relationship. And why is it relevant? Because my partner comes up, Margaret asks me a loving question, and I turn around and go, blah, blah, blah. And she looks at me and goes, who are you? Where did that come from? And here's where the problem comes from. Like Bill, I didn't see what I just said. I just played my father's behavior. I'm the only one that didn't see it. Margaret, of course, had to live with that for a moment. And the reality is that takes the juice out of the honeymoon a little bit, because all of a sudden she goes, wow, sometimes Bruce has a really stupid, bad behavior. And then she has to make a compromise. Well, sometimes he has this behavior, but we have a honeymoon pretty good. So, okay, sometimes I accept that he has this behavior. He'll do that. And when I do it, that's like, oh, Bruce is doing a stupid behavior, thing like that. But that's only one behavior. As time goes on and more thinking goes on, more and more the negative programs show up. And every time a negative program shows up, Margaret has to think, do I want to be in here with this bad behavior? Because it's getting more and more frequent at this point. And this could lead to a breakup. And the issue about it is two people who were so deeply in love all of a sudden find they can't live together. And the reason is this. It's not because their conscious wishes and desires which brought them together. It's because their subconscious programs that they're defaulting to undermine the relationship. I mean, if I would have played some of my father's negative behaviors on the first date, I probably wouldn't get a second date if some of those behaviors. So the idea is, where's my behavior coming from? 95% of the day from the program. Yeah, and where did those behaviors come from? The vast majority of them before age 7. And where did they come from? From observing my parents, my siblings, and my community. And therefore, I was programmed. Now, the idea that we have been programmed and that these programs inevitably will be 95% of our life, which means we will manifest these programs. This is not new at all for a very simple reason. The Jesuits, for 400 years, have told people, they say, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. And it's like nobody questioned, what the hell does that mean? I mean, everybody quotes it. What the hell does it mean? It means this. Whatever program goes in by age 7, that will be the expression of your life. Why? Because 95% of your life is going to come from those programs. They already knew then. They said, give me that child for 7 years. I'll program the outcome of that child in 7 years. Well, parents are doing that without even knowing they're doing that because they are modeling the behavior that that child's going to download. And then you say, yeah, but I'm going to be a conscious parent. I'm going to do my best behavior and everything because I want my child to download really great programs. I go, well, that sounds like a conscious wish, doesn't it? I go, yeah, it is. I go, well, how much of this conscious wish is going to play? I go, about 5% of the time. 5% of the time, I will actively be a conscious parent. I go, what about the other 95%? I said, oh, that's default. You're going to go back to your own programs. And I said, where'd you get your programs? From your parents. Where'd your parents get their program? From their parents. And all of a sudden, we start to see there's a lineage, not just genetics. There's a behavioral lineage because behavior is passed on in the first 7 years by the downloading of the behavior by the child. And I said, well, how significant is this? Well, it controls the entire fate of the child. Here's an example. They looked at the fate of children adopted into families where cancer was running in the family, a lineage of cancer. And guess what? The adopted child will get the same family cancer, the same propensity as a natural sibling. I go, so what? I go, the adopted child came from totally different genetics. And we've been looking at diseases as part of the genetic breakdown of the system. We have to revision this and recognize that familial diseases can be passed down just by the behavior alone, that the cancer that child will get is not because of the child's genetics, it's because of the programming the child received in a family where cancer is part of that family.
And not just an influence in like their eating habits or their exercise habits in the family, which is definitely a factor, but you're saying is also the psychological factors, those programs.
Oh, Jay, you got them all covered there because it's really critical. If I don't learn to eat a healthy diet, if I don't learn to take care of my own biology by taking care of my own health, by exercising, eating well, living well, if I don't learn the rules to do that and instead acquire programs that are less than healthy, then my life is less than healthy. That's just a simple point. So it's not just the behavior of how I talk to other people, but it's like, how do I treat myself?
Right.
How do I and I'm going to tell you right now, while we have a minute, I've been involved because of the work I do. I get involved with belief change programs where people come in and change beliefs. And it's interesting because before we do the belief change programs, sometimes we ask just a general question and check for a person's belief. And the one main one that I love to check for is the belief, I love myself. Point. From 80 to 90% of all participants in these workshops will not test positive to I love myself. They don't love themselves. 80 to 90%. I go, what's the relevance of that? I say, it's the biggest problem on this planet.
Yeah.
For the reason is this, very logically. If you personally feel you're unlovable and someone comes up and says, I love you, then you have to look at them and go, well, you obviously don't have any quality control. I know I'm not lovable. How the hell can you think I'm lovable?
Right.
And what we'll end up doing is sabotaging love relationships because our mind does not encourage love relationships, okay? And I go, well, how come we have trouble loving ourselves? And then I go back, parenting. I go, what do you mean? I go, when children are growing up, parents act like coaches of a sports team. I go, what does that mean? I say, well, look, let's say there's a college team, football, rugby, I don't care, whatever it is, and one of the kids playing on the team isn't performing very well. What's the job of the coach? Needle the kid. Stimulate him. Come on, you can do better. Who do you think you are? You're not worth it to be on this team. You don't deserve to be here. The point about these words is that when an individual is conscious, they understand what the coach means. You don't deserve to be on this team. That's only because I'm not working hard enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. Okay. So the athlete on the team hears this from the coach and adjusts their behavior to do better because they're aware of what the coach means when he says that. So I say, okay, now let's say the parents are coaching a kid under 7. I say the problem with a kid under 7 is they're not conscious. They're working from theta. That's below consciousness. That's record. I go, what's the point? I say, a child is throwing a tantrum in a store because they want a toy. The parent wants to leave the store because they're just aggravated by the situation. They want to get the heck out of the store. So the dad yells at the kid, you don't deserve that toy. Well, this becomes a very emotional moment, and the more emotion behind a learning, the deeper that learning goes. So if the child is emotionally affected by just what the parent said, here's the point. The kid's under 7. They're not conscious. They're in record. I say, what did they record? Not good enough. Not deserving. That's what the parents said. Yeah, but the parent didn't mean that for your whole life. The parent meant at this one moment, you're a pain in the ass, and I'm saying that because I want to get out of the store. I mean, if the child's under 7, they just download what the parent just said. Let's say the child's now 10 years old. I go, oh, and the parent goes through the same outburst? A 10-year-old child understands, yeah, I'm being a pain in the ass. Dad wants to go, and I'm not helping. There's consciousness to it. Under 7, no consciousness, just record. And I say, well, what did children record generally? What kind of things? Well, here, not smart enough, not good enough, not deserving, not loving, not good at math, not good at this. I say, why is it relevant? Because when the parent is saying that, they're trying to be the coach. Stimulate the kid to say, look, you can do better than that, go and do it. But the kid under 7 has no consciousness of the meaning of why the parent just said that. All the kid under 7 does is record it. I'm not deserving. I'm not lovable. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. I go, why is that a problem? I say, because those are now subconscious programs. And I say, so what? I say, now the kid's 50 years old. I go, so? I say, well, at 50 years old, just like everybody else, 95% of that behavior of that adult is coming from the subconscious. And I go, yeah, but what's the behavior? Not good enough, not deserving, not worthy. Holy crap. After 50 years, I'm reverting back and I'm still playing 95% of the day, the negative, limiting, self-sabotaging behavior that I got before 7. The child, therefore, is not being helped by parents acting as coaches, because coaching means consciousness. I have to understand what you mean when you say I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because I'm not working hard enough. Oh, okay, I got it. I'll work harder. Under 7, I'm not good enough is just a recording. I'm not good enough. That's what it is. And that program, because of habit, will play until that child or adult at some point decides to change that program. So basically, what's the issue? And the issue is this. Parents are supposed to be models of behavior for their children. That since we're only 5% conscious, then even a parent who says I'm a conscious parent generally will only be conscious parent 5% of the time, because that's where consciousness is involved. That parent, 95% of the time, will be playing the same damn programs it got from its parents, which has been passed down through a lineage. And so the relevance about this is, if parents don't know that the function of the child is to record the behavior of the parents, and the parents are unconsciously putting out these negative, disempowering programs, you're passing this on to the next generation. When that child of yours grows up and they have a child, 95% of their parenting skills will come from the unconscious parenting that they received themselves. So parents have to learn, look, you both as parents have to be modeling the best you can for your child. And you can't have a fight between the parents, because that throws off the child completely as who's the right and who's the wrong in this fight. Choose between your mother and father. That's a bitch right away. That's trouble right away. Parents have to be coordinated and work together. And if a parent's negative 95% behavior shows up, the other parent's function in this relationship is to talk to that other parent with the bad behavior and say, look, sometimes you're doing this behavior. The kid's watching you. It's downloading all this behavior. We have to change this, and we can work on changing it. That's really effective, because that helps change rather than arguing and fighting with each other over these behaviors. Number 2, that when anything is said to a child under 7, recognize this. It is being directly downloaded as spoken. Whatever those words are, whatever the meaning of those words are in the sense of anger or emotionality, that's what the child downloaded. And the significance about that then says, oh my God, if we would start treating our children a little bit differently, instead of acting as a coach and needling them, we start acting as a different coach and giving them better alternatives, giving them better ways, giving them encouragement, telling them all the time how smart they are, how wonderful they are. Keep saying that. Why? Because every time you say that, that's a recording. And every time you say a recording that's very positive like that, it means that part of their life when they are over 7 will be operating from great things like I'm lovable, I'm smart, I'm worthy. If these are the things that a child has been downloading, that's the behavior they're going to manifest. And all of a sudden it says, oh my God, we can change the entire world. Because the problems of today's world are just replaying the programs that have been passed from generation to generation, family to family, parent to child to parent to child. And if we want to make a stop, we have to recognize, oh my God, there is a programming period. And if those programs aren't fully encouraging and empowering, you have limited the life of your child. And that by just simply telling the child how smart they are all the time, guess what? The function of the mind is to take that program and manifest it. I got a program, I'm smart. Then the brain will have to prove that it's smart, because it's going to have to manifest the program. And unfortunately, most of the programs are negative. You're not that smart. You're not that good. You're not this. You're not that. It's like, oh my God, this is very, very, very bad.
Right. And to go back to your iPod analogy, that, that 0 to 7 years, it's almost, obviously you want to download to their iPod as much good music as you can, right?
Absolutely.
And then also give them the biggest variety of music, so that when they're after 7, if I understand you correctly, with the conscious mind creatively choosing new playlists, then they can choose their own playlist from a variety of music that's already downloaded into them, rather than only be able to have like a couple good songs and then 70% bad songs. Is that right?
100% accurate, Jay. That's 100% accurate. In other words, the limitation of a child is not on the ability of the brain. The brain is unlimited. A child's in a super learning state when they're under 7. That's the other beautiful part about it. You don't have to emphasize something over and over again. The child can get it right away. Think about it this way. A child under 7, growing up in a family, let's say there are 3 different languages spoken in that family. A 3-year-old child will download all 3 languages as separate entities and speak, in each one of them perfectly. And I say, okay, now let's say the child is 10 years old. I say, okay, try and teach them 1 new language. And all of a sudden you realize, holy, it's a real job now. It's hard. After age 7, it's hard for them to learn new things. I go, yeah, because before age 7, their brain is called a whole brain state. It's a super learning state. And that's how children can download massive quantities of data. And the more data they have, the bigger their library, the bigger their opportunity, the greater range of opportunities they have. You limit a child and say, this is what I want you to know, this little narrow thing. And that's all the child's going to walk away with. So the more you can feed a child, and do you have to feed them through repetition and beat them over the head with it? And the answer is no. Just give them joy. Joy will help them download anything at that point. And the fact is, how much can they download? More than you can imagine. And so the limitations on our children are basically just a reflection of our own limitations of what we gave them as opportunities. If we limit the opportunities, then we've limited their development of and expression of that as they become older.
Right. The major takeaways I'm taking from this, as a parent, I have a 3.5-year-old, Nico, and is one, this period, like download lots and lots of good music onto the iPod, lots and lots, and also model the behaviors in myself that then even if he unconsciously takes on like, oh, you're just like your dad, Jay, then he can say, yeah, I am like my dad, and be positive about it because it was good stuff that I modeled. And then also the honeymoon period, that part of when you were speaking of trying to be in that state as much as possible with your kid, because it's really easy sometimes because they can be so cute and so fun, and then other times they're just like, oh my gosh, like I need a timeout from you because they're just, learning their ways. But that it's so easy if you allow it to be in that honeymoon phase with a kid, if you can be in that moment with them because they're so present minded. So those are the major take homes I'm getting from all of this. It's been amazing, just this hour sharing everything you have, Bruce. I really appreciate it.
Well, I very much appreciate this opportunity because the fate of our world is the children.
Right.
As adults, we're just trying to fix up all the mess that we got screwed up with in the first years. But wouldn't it be much more effective to get them off the ground in really good stuff so we don't have to spend the rest of their lives fixing themselves? Then this world can evolve very, very quickly. So that's the whole purpose of it, is that a parent is fundamentally shaping the future of evolution.
Right.
Really, that's how profound it is. Why? Because the children are our evolution. It's what they do that's going to determine the fate of this world. And so therefore, being a parent is a real job. It's not like, oh, let's have a kid and I'll get somebody to raise it. It's like, oh my God, this is completely missing the point, that this is a very profound, valuable process of raising a child, because you're not just affecting that individual child's life, but you're affecting the life of all the children that will be coming together to form the future world that we're going to be getting old in. I wish all the children were really happy and wonderful, supporting. So when you get old, it's like, oh yeah, let's take care of Grandpa.
Right, exactly. And I can definitely see, like, as my work's evolved, it's the same thing. Like what I talked about, like changing the world one birth at a time, and what that meant like a couple years ago was how can we naturally, as gently, bring these babies into the world, and that meant like healthy pregnancy and natural birth, those kind of things. But now, as a parent, and as our listenership grows up as well and has these kiddos, wanting to do more and more, recognizing, okay, the healthier my kid is, I mean, we all want that for our child, not just physical health, but their esteem and their passion to go out in the world and make a difference. Parents are just hungry for this type of information. We're like, all right, what can I do? And I mean, there's tons of things we don't do right, but if we can do even one thing better today from listening this, then it's gonna ripple out, just as you said.
Yeah, and how simple is it? It's just every day, just hug your child every day. It's a habit. Remember, it's habit forming, that we're creating habits. What you do on a repetitive basis gets downloaded very much more easily into the system and much more influential. Every day, you give your love. You just spend a few minutes with them, even of holding them and giving them all the positive things about them, how smart they are, how wonderful, how capable, and all this. We just have to recognize it's much more effective to change behavior with love than to change it with anger. If you don't like the way the child's behaving, you get angry and yell at it and be mad at it, the child will have a tendency to wall itself off. Why? You're attacking it. So the child will not really be open and cooperative with you if you are really just coming down like, that's evil, you're stupid, and you're angry, I'm mad, and blah, blah, blah. And I go, it's much better to be loving and say, oh, well, there are much better ways to do things, and, it would be, this way or that way, and offering very positive insights into what's going on, because the brain of a child is more open to changing when there's love than when there's anger. Anger causes a protection response, which by definition means walling yourself off. So if you get angry at a child, the child will withdraw, and it may not have any positive effect on that behavior that you were mad at, because you basically just caused the child to disconnect.
Right.
And the idea is, if you want to change, you have to do it through love. Love, that there's a better way, that, this would be much happier and healthier or whatever, blah. I don't know. Those are the storylines you're going to have to make up. But the idea is you have a choice. Child's doing something wrong. You could yell at the child, get angry at the child, or in a loving way redirect the behavior. A child prefers the more positive redirection, because the anger, as I said, is a separation. Right. Anger means I have to wall myself off because my parents are angry, and that threatens me. Right. And that's what a child will do. So we have to be much more loving at every level of this.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time today. I'll make sure that in the show notes for our listeners, links to all of your books are there. It's Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, The Honeymoon Effect. They're all fantastic. So it's a way for you listeners to learn more about Bruce Lipton's work and what we're trying to do with our kiddos. So, Bruce, thank you again for being here today.
Jay, I want to thank you. I just want to offer that my website, brucelipton.com, very simple, brucelipton.com, has lots of free information, articles, reports, interviews, video interviews, all kinds of things free. And so it's a great resource, especially even under the column called resources of conscious programming resources and all kinds of things like that. And just to close, Jay, let me first say thank you for this opportunity to talk to this community. I really appreciate it, because to me this is a very important community, because this community of parents is really what's going to shape the future of our world. And therefore having an opportunity to talk with them is really great. And also I want people to know, look, hey, all of us may have come from really crappy childhood parenting. And why is it important is because if we want to, we are free to change any of the programs as adults. We have to exercise to do it, and on my website there are ways of changing belief systems. But why is it important? It doesn't mean just because you got a belief program that means that that's your life forever. That's your life until the day you decide to change the program. It's changing the program that requires a little more information because there's this mistake that if my conscious mind learns something new or a better way, that my subconscious mind will automatically accommodate that as well. No, the two minds are separate. You can easily educate the conscious mind and change whatever you don't like about it. But the subconscious mind is resistant to change. It's because it's the habit mind. I mean, think about it this way. Habits are important. Do you want your habits to change? No. I mean, if they're good, like walking, as we talked about, I learned that when I was 2. Thank God the thing is resistant to change. I'm still using it. I'm 70-something now. So I've been using the same program for 70 years, and it's working really good. Point, habit mind does not like to change easily. And therefore, we have to recognize that we can readily change the conscious mind, but there are processes to change the subconscious mind. And the point of bringing this up is, my God, you do not have to live out an entire life based on a programming that you got before age 7. You can rewrite any of the programs that are not supporting you and change them around into very positive programs. And then it's really cool because if the subconscious mind has a positive program and it's working 95% of the day, you sure as heck are going to manifest that conscious programming. And this is our freedom to recognize not only should we help our children get off the ground, but because we may have been, screwed up in that first 7-year period, we don't have to live that way forever. We can rewrite those beliefs, and that's empowerment for the adult side.
Yeah, and sometimes becoming a parent makes you conscious to those unconscious patterns, and then are seeking ways to be able to improve themselves as a person so they can be a better parent, so their kids benefit too.
Absolutely right, Jay. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
I appreciate the second opportunity. Maybe we'll do one in the future again. I like being with you and your community, Jay, so that would be great.
I'd love to.
Hi, it's Dr. J again, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I, as a parent, learn a ton from these experts coming on and sharing their wisdom, so I hope you're getting a lot out of it too. And I want to share something else with you. I've created a guide called the 40 Ways to Connect with Your Baby During Pregnancy. It's full of simple things you can do on a day-to-day basis that will help strengthen that bond that you have with your baby. It's a free download. You can go to my website at drjwarren.com/40ways and just enter your email. I'll send it right to you. You can download it and start working on it right away. All of the research that I'm learning in the fields of epigenetics and attachment parenting is showing that the more bonded you are during your pregnancy with your baby, the better the birth is going to go and the better parenting is going to go, because you have that strong foundation, a strong connection to build upon. So go again to my website. It's drjwarren.com/40ways and get that free guide. And again, thanks for listening.